Club for providing the venue today. Great spot, and the air conditioner is working really well. I'm here to hear from you. I want to hear what your thoughts are, what your concerns are. I'll try and answer any questions that you have. I can give you my opinion on things. I thought I'd just start it out by something that I just happened to do today at the judge's breakfast, because the person that invited me to the judge's breakfast said, "We only want to hear good news." And they introduced me, so I thanked them for inviting me, and I sat back down. So what I said to them, and I think it probably works well to get things started, is this is the end of the district work period, summer district work period. So we come home for a month and do different things. I generally spend most of my time in the district meeting with constituents, as I have this time. This was a little different because we got an extra week in the district work period. Exactly. And the reason some people are laughing is because right before the district work period was supposed to start, there was a big upheaval in the House about the Jeffrey Epstein files. And instead of dealing with it, the Speaker, Mike Thompson, just sent everybody home a week early. And so I came back, and I had some unscheduled time, and I tried to fill it because I don't come back to sit at home. I come back to down the district. So the Napa Solano, I'm going to tell you about the first 3 meetings I had. The Napa Solano Medical Society had been after me to meet with their group about the health care cuts that we're all going to feel here shortly. And so I met with them. It was at the Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa, and there were about 100 people in the conference room, all of whom were very, very frightened. And everything from starting with the $1 trillion cut in health care to their hospitals, rest homes, skilled nursing facilities, and clinics closing the doors, or if they were able to reduce services and fire people, then they might be able to keep the doors open, and that has consequences as well. So we were just doing a little radio interview outside talking about the number of people who rely on Medicaid for services, and the number that's usually used in California is 1 in 3. In Lake County, I was informed by Elizabeth Larson, who knows everything. It's about 52%, and this is a tough deal. But it's not just 52% of the patients in Lake County that are usually hurt by this. It's 100%, because if you close a hospital, that affects everybody. If you reduce services to keep a clinic or a hospital open, that affects everybody. If you have all the money in the world with best insurance and you show up at the hospital and you need the person who they fired to save your life or help you, you're out of luck. So it's not 1 in 3 or not 50%. It is everybody that's hurt. So it was very apparent having this meeting. And my second meeting I had was with my alma mater, St. Helena School District. I went through all the schools growing up in St. Helena, and they had just put together a proposal and signed a contract to install solar in all their schools, primary, elementary, junior high, and high school. I think the number was a little north of $300,000 a year that they were going to save in their electricity bill. And in addition to that, at the high school, the solar installation is going to go next to the high school / community swimming pool that has no shade. And so it was a twofer. They got savings on their electricity, and they got shade. When that big ugly bill got signed into law, the plug was literally pulled, because all of the renewable energy assistance that was coming to not only St. Helena Unified School District, but the $280 million of tax credits that were going to accrue to our district all were lost. And that's a big deal. Now, I'm a little biased because those tax credits, that was my legislation that was passed, so I didn't like that much. But the fact of the matter is, we have a tremendous demand for new electricity, and it's sparked largely by AI and crypto, but we can't keep up. And the only way we're going to keep up is by doing more renewable energy projects. And in addition to that, the impact on old-time energy sources is terrible on our climate. So that's a huge, huge concern. And then the third meeting I had was, I started something years ago called the Student Leadership Council. And it's open to all high school students in our district. It's modeled after the Chamber of Commerce's leadership program. So the students sign up, they do the entire program, meeting with influential people in our community. So there's business leaders, there's elected leaders, government workers, philanthropic community folks, you name it. All the public safety folks come in, fire chiefs, sheriffs, police officers, and it really gives the young people an opportunity to meet with community leaders and get some ideas of what they may want to do, learn how to network, and to formalize their priorities and their passions. They always have a project that they do at the end of the thing, and it's really great. And that meeting left me very, very impressed, because the young student leaders are awesome. I also invited former student leaders who are now doing successful things. They came. They all have great stories that they share with the current crop of student leaders. I also invited young people who had done internships in one of my offices either in D.C. or in the district, and they were talking about the things that they did. One young woman from Lake County came to my office in D.C. from Calif to UC Berkeley, and she was a Robert Matsui Fellow and was placed in my office, and she was lights out. Product of Lake County schools, grew up here her whole life, and I hired her. As a matter of fact, she did the last part of her last semester, or whatever UC Berkeley is on, while working in my office. And then when she was done and she graduated, she went to my Napa office, and she did Lake County work and Napa work, and she was just remarkable. I questioned her sense of good judgment, because instead of staying as a field worker in my Napa office, she thought it would be better if she accepted that scholarship to Harvard Law School. And she was there, and she's working for a law firm, and she was talking about these young people about the things that she was doing. And I had another guy who came to my office when Vallejo was in our district as a wounded warrior fellow. And he was just superb. He too was from Berkeley, and he came in his last part of his senior year, graduated while a fellow in my office, and then he went to law school, and he came and talked to the group. And he's now working, hasn't finished law school yet, he has one more year, but he's working in the DA's office in Contra Costa County. And he told everybody, he said, it's a great job, I love it, I'm going to finish up my law degree, and this is where I want to work. He said, but what's really cool is I'm trying my first case, not even a lawyer yet, but I'm trying my first case, and it starts on Monday. And I didn't know that you did that, but obviously they do. And it was an interesting case, it was a DUI. And I said, well, why did they even take a DUI to court? And that's pretty perfunctory now. You did it. Here's how much it's going to cost you, and it's going to hurt, and don't do it again. And it's very, very expensive. And he said, well, his the drunk driver's defense was he wasn't driving, and he wasn't driving because he was passed out in the middle lane. But he called me yesterday, and he said, I won my case. So I wrap up with that, because I walked away from those young folks, and I knew that notwithstanding the tough times we're in right now, notwithstanding the many challenges that we face, notwithstanding the concerns and the anger that a lot of us have right now, our better days are ahead of us. We just need to figure out how to get through this. And with that, what are your concerns? Yes, ma'am.
When have we received yes on Prop 50 mail flyers? We've already received 3 vote no on Prop 50s in the mail.
Did everybody hear the question?
No.
The question was on Proposition 50, the redistricting proposition. She's already received 3 flyers on the no side. That's going to be the first 3 of many no flyers that you're going to receive. I've only received 1. And the one that I received is the one that's getting all the criticism for taking the League of Women Voter comments out of context. Now, the League of Women Voters came out and said, that's not what we said, that's not how we said it, ignore that. And Common Cause has come out and done everything short of endorsing Prop 50. So you're going to see a lot of those. Let me tell you, pardon me?
Adam has endorsed. But when are we going to see yes on Prop 50?
Oh, I'm sure you will. You'll see a lot of them. But, given that you brought it up, I'll tell you, I'm for nonpartisan, independent redistricting commissions, what we have in California. But I'm for them in all 50 states.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think that partisan redistricting is not good, and I think we need to do it on a as nonpartisan basis as we possibly can. But the situation that we're in right now is we have the President of the United States contacts the governor of the state of Texas and says, steal 5 seats for me. So they did the mid-decade redistricting, specifically to do partisan redistricting to get rid of 5 Democrats and add 5 Republicans. So as much as I'm against partisan midterm or mid-decade redistricting, I'm also against unilaterally disarming. I think that we need to do this. We need to meet those 5 seats, and I think sadly it's important.
Congressman, this is a more general question, and that is, are you involved in or aware of any bipartisan efforts to counteract some of these, draconian decisions that are being made by the president?
Yeah, the question is are there any bipartisan efforts to stop any of the stuff that's going on?
No.
And sadly, the answer is not a lot. And this is a one team, one solution effort on the part of the White House and both houses in Congress. And it makes it very difficult because of numbers. You can start with, I should have probably mentioned this, there's only a 3-seat difference in the House of Representatives, the thinnest margin since the Depression. And that's pretty remarkable. Does anybody know how we got to that 3-seat majority?
So cabinet this one?
No. North Carolina, and right before the last election, they did a mid-decade partisan redistricting, and they threw 3 Democrats out, replaced them with Republicans, and they gained the majority that way. So it's pretty partisan right now. And I'll give you the example I've been using a lot of places, and we've already talked about renewable energy and how important that is. That big ugly bill came through my committee, the Ways and Means Committee. We had a lot of jurisdiction in that bill. And they came through in the middle of the night. They wanted to do it in the middle of the night. And we didn't want that to happen. We thought that the voters deserved to see that bill, hear the debate on that bill. So we kept the committee going for, I think it was 26 or 27 hours. We went around the clock to make sure that that vote and most of those amendments were taken in the sunlight. And I had a couple of amendments, one of which was to get rid of what they were trying to do to renewable energy. And I brought my amendment up, and believe me, every Democrat spoke on every amendment because we were trying to delay and get this thing to daylight, right? And so everybody Nobody spoke on it. At the end of the hearing, it was passed, straight party line vote, and every amendment was defeated, straight party line vote. And a reporter asked one of my colleagues, Vern Buchanan from Florida, they said, you just voted to do away with all the renewable energy stuff. And you have a, catch this, you have a $6 billion renewable energy project in your district. How do you justify that to your district and to your constituents? To which he said, I'm hoping the Senate can fix it. So that's the type of blind following that we're seeing right now. And I probably should preface that there are other issues that, you know, I work well together with anybody who's willing to work with me. You know, the Lugar Foundation always ranks me very, very high in bipartisan working with my colleagues. I'm always in the top 3 of D's and R's in California, and in the top 30, 31, 33, 34 in the nation. And I believe that you guys send me to Washington to get things done. And if you want to get things done, you got to work across the aisle. And so I do that a lot, and I still do that. Mike Kelly, who is on the Ways and Means Committee with me from Pennsylvania, you can't go any further to the right than Mike Kelly. If he took a baby step to the right, he would literally fall off the edge. And yet he and I are working on some mental health legislation that is a game changer in the mental health space if we can get that done. So I work with folks. And then, is anybody here part of the PG&E lawsuit because of the fires?
Relatives,
Pardon me?
relative of,
Okay.
I'm a relative of Paradise.
So a bunch of folks, largely in Napa, Sonoma, and Butte County, were part of a lawsuit against PG&E because their homes were burned down. So they did this settlement, and the settlement, the money that they got, that the victims got in the settlement, was not enough money to rebuild their home. And on top of that, because of the 2017 tax bill, they had to pay tax on all the money they got. And because of the way the settlement was structured, the lawyers had no tax liability. It came out of the amount that went to the victims. So I did legislation that relieved victims of their tax liability. And I did it twice because both times it went over to the Senate and died. And the second time that it went to the Senate and died, the senator in the minority, remember we had a majority, the Democrats were in the majority in the Senate last year. The Republican who was the second, was the ranking member, the highest Republican on the Finance Committee, he killed it because he said, I think we're going to win back the Senate, and it's not going to happen unless it happens under my watch. And so it was killed twice. And I went to a Republican, to Greg Stubbe from Florida. Another guy, he doesn't even have to, it's not even a baby step for him. He can kind of look to the right, he falls off the edge. And he had a similar issue in Florida. We had some Louisiana interests that were in the same space, and then the derailment in Ohio, Palestine, Ohio, they were in the same predicament. So I went to Stubbe as a member of the Ways and Means Committee with a man. I said, we can't let this stuff we can't let it do this. We got to do it. So there's a procedure in Congress. It's called a discharge petition. And I can't imagine that anybody here would know what that is. And I can tell you, all the time I've been in Congress, I've never been home on the weekend and gone to the store and had somebody come up and say, hey, I need to talk to you about this discharge petition. It's an arcane deal. It's rarely used. It's only worked, it's only happened 3 times in the last 30 years. The last time was on this bill for fire victims. And what it is if you have a bill that the leadership, the majority party, isn't acting on, if you get 218 members of Congress to sign a discharge petition, they have to act. So Stubbe and I did it. It was incredibly embarrassing for the Republicans that they allowed in the Senate, that they allowed this to die. The Speaker brought it up, we passed it, went to the Senate, and they had no choice but to pass that. And so those fire victims, because of that, had their tax liability removed. And that was $550 billion that came back to our district. And those were people, mostly working class people. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. First, I'd like to ask you to defend the Constitution
I
and
can't hear you.
democracy. I'd like to ask you to defend the Constitution and democracy in Washington when you're there. Thank you. Secondly, I'd like to ask you to do something about the out-of-control cost of homeowners insurance in California.
Great question. First, I'm all for the Constitution.
Yay!
I'm all for democracy.
Yay!
And I'm worried about preserving our democracy.
Yay!
And I think it is a real concern. In regard to the homeowners' insurance costs, that's a very real issue. I bet there are people in this room who've had their insurance canceled. I've been through every hoop in the world to the point where I had to trim a tree back in my, where I live in St. Helena, an ornamental maple tree because it was too close to an outbuilding or something. And I've heard the stories from folks that have had to just completely redo stuff and still can't get insurance. And I'll guarantee you with this latest fire, we're going to be back into that predicament again. So first of all, insurance stuff is regulated by the state. The federal government doesn't have a lot to do with it, but I was of the belief that it's such a big problem that I should figure out some way that I could do something, try to do something about it. So I found a program in Alabama where Alabama was impacted by hurricanes. And similar to here, the insurance industry just left that part of Alabama. Same deal. Nobody was there, they wouldn't insure. So the Alabamians were told the same thing I'm told when I contact the insurance commissioner and insurance companies. If the people who own the houses would do the resiliency work that they need to do, we'll insure them. So, and that's not totally accurate, believe me. But I took them for the word, and I modeled the program they used in Alabama. Alabama did FEMA grants, $10,000 per homeowner, to increase their disaster resilience. And it was unbelievably successful. The insurance companies rushed back to that area. So I have legislation that would provide a $10,000 FEMA grant for fire resistance, disaster resilience for homeowners. Now that's only part of the problem. Your house can be the most resilient house in the world, and the 1,000-acre piece of property next to you can go unattended because you know the drill. If you own 100 acres, you don't have the wherewithal to do the resiliency work you need to do. So I added a 30% tax credit for fire prevention and resiliency work for large property owners. Again, bipartisan. Doug Lamalfa is my co-author. We've got, every day, we get more sponsors, both outside groups as well as colleagues. So we're trying to do something about that. And then I'm working on an affordability effort that will be a much bigger deal to include all areas whereby we can use the tax code to make life more affordable for regular people. And there'll be some home insurance and home purchasing provisions for that.
A couple of weeks ago, I actually emailed you, and I would like to read you what I emailed, okay? And then I have another question to follow up on it because what you said here, okay? Mr. Thompson, I'd like to know if Congress can do anything about finding out the motivation behind the raid on Mr. Bolton. The property on Mr. Bolton's property, John Bolton's property. It seems to me that it is a bit of an overreach and needs to be addressed. And the reason why I say this is because clearly Mr. Bolton is an outspoken opponent of Mr. Trump, and he has been on this open retaliation against people who speak out against him. Now, Mr. Bolton is no fan, I am no fan of his whatsoever. But I do believe that every citizen has the right to be able to express themselves without having to worry about the DOJ coming in and raiding their homes for this. Now, I would like to know if, based on your information that you've given here today, on a bipartisan basis, I would imagine that this would be a concern for any politician or any outspoken person who is either on Republican or Democratic side. Is there something that Congress can do that would protect an ordinary citizen who doesn't have the platform Mr. Bolton has from having retaliation from something like this happening to them?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. But the more complicated part of that is, in order to be successful in what we can do, you're going to have bipartisan support. And there's no bipartisan support. You're going to have to go a long way, maybe with the exception of Tom Massey from Kentucky, you're going to have to go a long way to find a Republican that's going to go against this president. And it's not just Bolton. Bolton is an interesting reference because he was an appointee of President Trump the first time he was in office. He was very conservative, and so that he's kind of an outlier. But they're doing the same thing with Adam Schiff and anybody else that they see as being a threat to them. And it is frightening, and there needs to be. You can't weaponize, the Department of Justice.
No. And that's my concern. Is there some legislation that could be applied to, say, the Fourth or the First Amendment that would at least slow him down?
Possibly, but you're not going to get any hearing on it. As I say, nobody in the Republican leadership is going to go against the president. Yes.
Prop 50, I think, is really important. What I'm really concerned is if Trump declares a state of emergency 30 days before the election, we won't have an election in 2026. And that really, and I don't know if the Congress has any power with that. Is there anything?
Yeah, there's more and more people are expressing that concern. And I think it is something that everybody should be concerned about. I'm particularly concerned with this deployment of the National Guard to Washington, D.C., and the threat to deploy them to other cities. He has the authority to do it in Washington, D.C. He does not have the authority to do it in Chicago or San Francisco. And I'm concerned that a lot of that, and it's interesting, he has the authority under the law to deploy the National Guard in Washington, D.C. today, but on January 6th, he planned to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that should be noted.
I know.
So I'm concerned that that's part of an effort, maybe not to declare an emergency or a martial law, but just to have armed, uniformed individuals at polling places at the same time he's calling to do away with mail-in ballots. So it's something that we're all very worried about. We're all watching, and everybody is on point trying to figure out where we can insert ourselves to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes, sir. You just brought up, and this gentleman did here, I have a whole list of bullet points. But Posse Comitatus, I served in the Army. To me, this is insane. And I have friends on both sides of the Army. I know it was myself, but this is craziness to me. And to me,
Well, there's nobody on our side of the aisle that's supporting Posse Comitatus.
I understand that. So something, the bell gets rung, and then the ring of the bell can go backwards, meaning if someone were to take up this mantle, the opposite of Posse Comitatus, down to the state level or the county level or city level, that's very scary. It's been on my mind for a long time. The other thing, sir, is masked, uniformed and ununiformed government servants who are acting in the role of law enforcement wearing masks.
Yeah.
That is way beyond the line, and I'm hoping there's something that words can be put on it.
I agree with you. It shouldn't be done that way. And I am a co-author of legislation to prohibit these guys from wearing masks. And I'm also the co-author of legislation, and this goes back. I started this effort at the request of the sheriff in Napa County with ICE wearing police identifiers on their uniforms. Local cops came to me and said, this is a real problem. We have worked forever to build trust within the immigrant community, and we've built that trust. And now when ICE shows up at the police, it diminishes that trust, and it puts the whole community at risk. So if someone in the immigrant community is a victim of a crime, they're reluctant to report it. If they're a witness to a crime, they're reluctant to step forward. And there's been big pushback on doing that. I think both are dangerous. And as I say, I am supportive of and co-author of legislation to do away with that.
Can I follow up a little bit? Not on that point, sir, but a question came up about, you brought up healthcare. Healthcare. So I'm in the VA system. And so I don't know exactly what's going on right here. And I go into my VA clinic, and everything seems normal until the last time I went in, and my primary provider, and she finally says, I'm very scared. And I'm like, what? She said, look at the color of my skin. I'm not sure someone's not going to pick me up off the street. And then that really hits home. It has nothing to do with, am I getting good meds or not? It has to do with, I have a provider sitting across from me who is living under fear, and she's expected to do her job.
It's your provider, your healthcare provider, it's school kids, it's vineyard workers, it's hospitality workers, it's U.S. citizens, and it's designed to instill fear in people in this country and people who might want to come to this country. I think it's beyond the pale. I think it needs to stop. And it has real serious impacts for all of us. Kids can't learn in school. Parents can't go to work sometimes. It's an absolute mess. And I'll just leave you with a couple of thoughts. In California, we have a teacher shortage, K-12 teacher shortage of 10,000 teachers. 10,000 teachers short. There are 10,000 DACA recipients teaching in our schools. So if these guys get their way, those 10,000 DACA workers are deported. And our California school shortage goes from 10,000 teachers to 20,000 teachers. It is just unbelievable. And for the first time, I've been working with all this U.S. and federal government agencies on immigration issues, State Department issues, for as long as I've been around. And we have two cases very recently. One, a U.S. citizen, American citizen, works and runs the financial arm of a major institution that services our district. She's the sole provider for her family. She has an invalid mother and 3 younger siblings. She went to Mexico on some sort of educational trip. The federal government made an error on her paperwork, and they wouldn't let her come back. And it took 2 or 3 days before she called my office, and we got her back. But it took 4 weeks after I was notified. That has never happened before. And then we just had a case that was resolved this last week where a family, U.S. citizens, were in Syria, and they couldn't get back. And we called the State Department and said, we have this problem, a family, a U.S. citizen family, they're not allowing them, they can't get out. And the State Department said, tell them to walk to the border. We don't have an embassy in Syria anymore. They're on their own. And I'm here to tell you, I don't care where you are. If you're a U.S. citizen, we do everything we can to get you back. And it's funny. It would be funny if it wasn't so serious how we got back. I called Lindsey Graham, the U.S. Senator, got a contact for a mercenary group that does extractions. Put them in touch with this family and with the Red Crescent in Syria, their equivalent of the Red Cross. And the family couldn't afford it. It was expensive to do that. And but because of the pressure and the focus that my office brought on this, the Red Crescent figured out a way to get them across the border, and they eventually came on this last week. But there's no interest in helping anybody who is an immigrant, who is stuck in another country. There's a big pressure to get people to self-report, and there's a big effort to, as we've been witnessing, for ICE. ICE has a bigger budget than, I think the health care budget in the federal government. That's just amazing that would be the case. And I saw an ad today where Homeland Security is offering $50,000 bonuses for people to sign up to get a job with ICE. Yes.
What are you doing about the internal corruption of Lake County? And the code enforcement officer that got arrested a few months ago, and all the internal corruption that's going on here in Lake County?
I don't know of any internal corruption that's going on. If there is, the proper thing to do is to contact the district attorney and turn that information over to them.
We've tried to do that, and we've got complete dead silence, no response. And there's other people that are having issues with code enforcement, and it's been spoke about at board of supervisors meetings, and it's definitely an issue, especially around cannabis. And we were wondering, is there a reason that the federal government doesn't come in and help local code enforcement or police?
It's not something within the purview of the federal government. But you can send me the information, I'll take a look at it.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Oh, first of all, thank you for being come to Cobb and spend time with us. I'm curious of your thoughts. I voted this last time, but I didn't vote for president. I think the two main choices were so awful.
Well, let me get all the here.
To me, Kamala Harris, all I heard her do was spout these inane platitudes, and that's basically all there was. So I didn't even vote for president this time. But if those weren't inane platitudes, you tell me what else they were, about the yellow school bus and all these silly things she was saying. And she was asked, I think, on at one point, what should you do different than Biden? And she said something like, I can't think of anything right now. That sort of thing was, to me, the two choices were awful. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, well, I think it was a very difficult situation where President Biden didn't get out of the race until it was too late, and there was very little to do. And I think Kamala Harris was asked to and stepped up to the challenge. And I think given the amount of time she had to do it, did a pretty doggone remarkable job. I don't have the same concerns that you have. You know, she was district attorney, she was attorney general, she was a U.S. senator, and she was the vice president of the United States. And I thought the campaign that she ran was pretty good. And as far as her comment about what would I do different, that's probably not how I would have answered that question. But if you recall, when President Biden was elected, we were in bad shape. The pandemic was in full force. We were struggling, and it was under his leadership that we did all the good stuff we did. The American Rescue Plan that literally saved everything. All the money that was funneled into health care to provide for vaccines and respirators and all the things that were needed. The money that went to local government, because local governments were gone, and they would have fired cops, firefighters, healthcare professionals. All that was saved. The Inflation Reduction Act that did so much to bring money into this country and investments. The transportation bill, the biggest investment in transportation since the Eisenhower administration. The CHIPS and Science bill, if you recall, part of the supply chain disruption was you couldn't get chips. None of them were made here. And we went from making all of them to making like, I think it was 8% or 12% of them. We couldn't keep up with the demand here. And foreign countries were a lot worse off with COVID than we were. So our entire supply chain was disrupted. And that CHIPS and Science Act, that brought in a $400 billion investment in the United States of America for manufacturing facilities. And when it was all said and done, we recovered faster than any of the industrialized foreign countries, and we're the envy of those foreign countries. So bottom line, I didn't see a lot that he did that was terrible.
So I'm concerned about the outsized impact that some of the federal policy will have on rural communities like ours. We talked about healthcare, we talked about fear among our farm worker community members. Can you also talk a little bit about what likelihood that we're going to see another federal public land sale legislation before the midterms? And the second part of my question is, what can community members like us do in the meantime in regards to some of these impacts?
Well, I'm assuming that on the public land sale, you're talking about the provision that was in the big ugly bill.
Yeah.
And the only reason it came out was it didn't, the parliamentarian in the Senate ruled that it wasn't legal to do that. The proponent, Mike Lee, has said, I'm coming. And we've been through this before. You know, when we did my legislation to do Berryessa Snow Mountain, and for those of you who've been around a while, you probably remember that wasn't just the pipe dream that I had. That was a community effort. I had public hearings starting in Lake County for that. We had public hearings throughout the entire area that encompassed those properties. And Tuleomi, the group that was the outside agitator, if you will, they did a fantastic job. There were hundreds of private sector businesses that signed that petition that they wanted this. And so I got the bill, everything was good. There was no way we were going to get it out of the Congress at the time. So I went to the President of the United States and I said, this is a great bill. I've been putting this together for years, working with incredible local governments, local community groups, everybody, not everybody, overwhelming support for this bill. Can you do this with the Antiquities Act? And he did. And then when he left office, the first thing that the new president did was order a review of everything that was done under the Antiquities Act because they wanted to remove all of those protections. And Ryan Zinke, my colleague in Congress now, was the Secretary of Interior, and I met with him directly. And I put a lot of time in making sure he understood this wasn't some knucklehead's idea to do this. This was the entire community, and it stayed. So this isn't my first fight with protecting the improvements that we've made. And I have a lot of, I take a lot of pride in the work that I've done to protect public lands. That was, I think, 360,000 acres. It's protected forever. You know, for our great grandkids, kids are going to be able to enjoy that. I also did a big public land protection on the North Coast when the North Coast was in our district. That was 374,000 acres. And it was unique because that bill, that one I did with Bill through both houses, and Republicans in charge of the House, Richard Pombo, chair of the Natural Resources Committee, who didn't think there should be anything that was publicly owned. I got it through his committee, through the House, and George W. Bush signed that into law. And we did something really unique in that program One of the big opponents of protecting public land is usually the off-road vehicle people, because they want to ride and stuff. And they came out in strong opposition. And I said, well, why are you opposed to it? So this is our thing. We want to do off-road vehicles. I said, well, it's not my thing, but I'm for you if that's what you want to do. So I set aside 64,000 acres just for off-road vehicle use. And that's the first wilderness bill they ever signed on. Ironically, that 64,000 acres was one of the pieces that Mike Lee wanted to sell. And then the other thing that I did in that bill was the mountain bike community. They were just off the charts against this thing. We ride our mountain bikes up on these roads, and so I said, and you should be able to. It's a legal road. Have a ride your mountain bike there. And I cherry stemmed out every legal road in that 370,000 acres and kept it open for mechanized use. They still complain. The lobbyists at the time from Washington called me and said, we're going to defeat this bill. And I said, well, why? I gave you your roads. Yeah, but the most important road you took out. And I said, well, where is it? So she identified it on the map. I found it on the map. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, if you come out to my district and you ride that road from where you say it starts to the beach where you want to go, and if you do that, I'll give you the mountain bike, I'll pay for your whole trip out here, I'll let you stay overnight for a week in the most beautiful coastal community in the western United States. And she said, I'm sensing that I'm missing something. Said, yeah, you're missing that 300-foot drop-off from the end of the road to the beach. And then the other thing we did, and I think it was legitimate, is I put a provision in that applies to all wilderness areas that says that for fire prevention, for fighting fire, you can bring mechanized equipment into a wilderness area. And it's something that has really saved us in these fires that we've had. Chief.
Congressman, thank you very much for the time coming to our mountain. It's good to see you again. There's a real controversial issue going on in our county, in your district right now, and it's an attempt to change the name of Kelseyville to another name. And luckily, we have Supervisor Pica who took the lead, put it to a vote of the people to say, what do you want done? It was an advisory, not binding. Overwhelmingly, it was no, leave the name alone. Is there any kind of support that we could get? Because it's hung up with the BGN and what's the other one? CGN. Yeah, CGN. And you know, we just need to get some closure because it's definitely divisive in the community. And I don't know if there's anything from Washington, D.C. that could apply some pressure. Just deal with it. Whether it goes one way or the other, please, let's just get it done.
Well, I'll defer to Jessica, but I believe that that vote of the public pretty much stopped things from going forward. Is that pretty? I can't imagine them coming out now when there's a strong public voice like that. Can you?
Yeah.
Well, I would hope that.
Come up here so you can be in the line of fire. She does a great job, and I want you to know that I hear a lot from her in her role in the overall supervisors for rural counties across the country. She's a very respected voice and represents our area well.
So the process before it goes to the federal committee for the decision, it has to, there's a California committee, the California Committee on Advisory on Geographic Names. They have to give a recommendation, and then it will go to the federal committee.
But they're dragging their feet.
I know.
I know you know that. I just want to make sure the congressman knew that this is a dilemma for us.
I've asked many times. I agree with you. We need closure. Our community needs closure. We need a decision to be made. The voice of the people is really strong. That's why we should put it on the ballot. But I don't think either one of us can do anything, right?
football. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you. Thanks, Jess.
Do you believe that local government should be allowed to require private citizens to seek permission before wearing political clothing at Board of Supervisors meetings during public comment and vote?
I don't know, is there an electioneering rule?
Only on election day when there is a polling place in the courthouse.
There you go. And, you know, and that's state law. You can't electioneer within, I think it's 300 feet of the polling place. So if you go into a courthouse or you go into a city council and that's a polling place and it's election day, you would do so.
I was recently asked to start asking permission for wearing political t-shirts before public input by the county administration department in regards to me protesting how our community development director has overseen our cannabis program during her reign.
All I know is I was doing a TV debate at Key TV in Eureka years ago in one of my races. And I had a candidate who ran against me every time. And I won't go into her physical description, but she showed up for the debate and she was wearing a t-shirt that said something derogatory about, I think, George Bush at the time. And the League of Voters told her she couldn't wear it. She said, "This is America, I have a right to free speech, I'm wearing it." And they said, "You're right, it's America, you have a right to free speech, but if you're going to go on that platform and sit behind the table with Mike and the other candidates, you can't wear it." And she said, "Fine, I'll turn it inside out." And there was nothing between her and that t-shirt. And immediately, I said, "Let her wear it, let her wear it." Yes.
On the subject of the ICE people with the masks and no designation on the outside of the uniforms, which I don't agree with because our local law enforcement have badges and badge numbers and names. I think all law enforcement people should be able to be identified. But I have heard that along with this $50,000 incentive pay thing, that they're actually recruiting people from white supremacist organizations like the Proud Boys and things like that. And so I am concerned that the makeup of the group is not anti-discrimination.
I don't blame you for being concerned. I've heard those rumors, so I don't know if they're true. I don't think the Proud Boys belong any place in a orderly, ethical situation or community. And I would just suggest that if my dreams come true and in the next midterms we flip the House, we will have subpoena power, and those are answers to two questions that were asked.
I recently heard about a tactic called a soft secession. A hard secession is where a state wants to leave the Union of the United States. And that's against law, we cannot do that. The soft secession is when they don't pay the federal government the money that they should. And I'd like to know if the soft secession is a viable tactic, particularly since we are paying, but we are no longer getting things like Medicaid, FEMA, and things like this. So if they can get away with not doing what they're supposed to do with money, can we get away with not paying them, and how do we not keep
I think the question is, can we withhold our federal income tax?
No.
Security and Medicare payments and stuff we pay.
You know, what we pay them for like FEMA and stuff like that, that's our revenue that gets taken from our state and then gets distributed throughout the 50 states.
California's economy generates money that I don't know how they pay it.
They pay it through federal income taxes. And the answer is no. It's the law that we pay our federal income tax. And I'll tell you something. Bill, is that camera live? Well, I apologize in advance for my vernacular, but if you want to really be pissed off, listen to this. When you take all the money that California sends to Washington, D.C. in our taxes, and you subtract what we get back from the federal government, what we leave on the table is more than the state budget for 47 other states. So when people say, oh, California's all messed up, California doesn't know what they're doing, you know, we're a better state. Well, if you're a better state, pay your own freight. Why are we paying it? Let us get messed up and keep our money.
I think the California, for all the red state, I think one of the financial check, California's money pretty much for all the red state in the south.
Well, there's no question about it. Everything that they get comes in part from California and from New York.
Quick question. I'm very much in support of the redistricting measure, but one of my concerns is you're no longer representing us folks in most of Lake County. Can you comment on that? Or?
Well, the map that the legislature passed takes me out of most of Lake County. Now, that's hard. I love my district. I love the people in my district, and if I had my way, that would be our district forever. And I have a very close association and affinity with Lake County, as you know. I own property here. At some point, I hope to see a house on that property, and it's a great county, and I want to be here. Now, one other time, in all the years I've served in the state senate and in Congress, I've represented all of Lake County except for 10 years, and that was the last redistricting, the first time the commission drew the map. And they split Lake County. So I shared it with John Garamendi. Now, I'm a firm believer that you can't represent part of the county. You got to represent all of the county. So I did all the work that I was asked to do and needed to do, and probably more during that 10-year period. John and I partnered on things. Some things I just did. I was up here a lot during those 10 years. I didn't say, well, it's only half the county. I'm only going there half the time. I did the same routine that I've always done. Now, the new map is not quite as generous with Lake County as I would have liked it to have been. But they gave me, we went back to the drawing board 3 or 4 times. They gave me what they said was all they could give me and still do what it was they were trying to accomplish, and that's win those 5 seats. So you're right. My share of Lake County is greatly reduced. My love for Lake County will not be, and you'll see me following you all the time. And I'm still coming to pick chestnuts. Okay. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Hi, Mike Thompson. Thanks for coming today. Good to see you. Rogers, my wife and I are buddy office today. Two questions for you. If we're sending all this money to the federal government, why are Allison and myself and other employers paying food taxes? That's federal unemployment tax assessment. That's what we pay because the state of California borrows to pay for unemployment. So when we were paying federal unemployment tax assessment, more every year to pay for that. So if we have a surplus going, why are you just giving that to the employer? And then I have a second question.
Well, we don't.
And just to okay, we had a $50 billion unemployment fraud from California, and the governor in his budget just stuck it to the employers to pay for it. We didn't get that benefit. We've been working for the last 6 years for free for the King of California, who's raised our rates by 250%. He's paid $2.5 million from the public utility company. That's who he was with at the French Laundry, by the way, everybody. On November 6th of 2020, he was with the public utility company's lobbyists. That's why your rates, if your rates have gone up by 250%, like ours have in the business, well, we're starving to death. And you're sticking us with that? Okay, but people who are for all of this are. Our rates are up 250%. At my house, they're up by 3,000% because we have solar. So wonderful. We don't get to use it. The public utility company gets to steal 700 kilowatts every month from our production. We don't get to use it. So our bill in February and March, it was $12 a kilowatt. Really? And then they get to take all of my kilowatts and make grandma and grandpa starve and be homeless. I'm not making that up. I was told by our supervisor to go to the CPUC meeting, so I did. Grandma and Grandpa are becoming homeless, and guess who just bought a new home in Mount Tamalpais for $10 million and $2.5 million in his back pocket, but we're starving to death. An extra $17,000 out of our household last week. Last year, to the public utility companies, if we had SMUD, we wouldn't have had that. We would have been able to go on vacation. We would have been able to have a weekend. We don't have any of that, and we barely have any pay. Everyone here is for a living wage. How come we don't get one? How come we're not? And how come the school is so clear? All in this state, all kilowatts are equal, but some are more equal than others, and that's why you get to steal. That's from Animal Farm. Animal Farm is a critique on Stalinism. So that's what we're going to bring in. It's wonderful. Please. And then I have a second question.
You have a question?
Ask your second question.
How many small businesses were destroyed in California as the result of the policies in California, which were the most draconian in the entire country?
What kind of policies?
The policies of code. How many businesses shut down, locked down? We've been working for free. We don't have our 13th Amendment rights for the last 6 years. We're just about breaking up now. But that's what the story is. And this is why people are going out of business. Because you take their wage, you regulate their wage out of existence, and then say whoever comes along now deserves my wage. But then I got to run around and train them. They're not ready. The people who are left working are teenagers. And you've left those teenagers 4 years behind. They didn't go to school. So you're leaving us making the work ethic, their education, all of it, for nothing.
Thank you.
Our effort is nothing. And I didn't hear you, Mike, I didn't hear you say in the recovery, I didn't hear you say anything about the private sector. It was all the government, corporatocracy, S&P 500, and that's who benefited. 50% of retail was destroyed, and 50% of retail went to Amazon, and that's why he's flying off in spacecraft, and that's why we're down in the dungeon, in the dump. We never get to go on any vacation. My wife is working her butt. We were 15 years in the last 6 years. So when do we get life, liberty, and consumer happiness back in?
I did say something about the private sector in all the COVID relief funds, in all the COVID relief funds that Congress passed. If the American Rescue Plan had not have passed, there wouldn't be any small businesses. That was money that came right back to the districts. And when you keep cops on the street, you keep firefighters in the engines, you keep healthcare open, that's all money that's generated locally and multiplies out across the community. Now, as you know, the federal government has little to do with public utilities at the state level. And I do think there's some things that can be done at the state level. I do think that the California Public Utilities Commission has made wrong turns in the past, and I think it's tough. I have the same problems that you have with my business, with my home. I pay the same exorbitant amount of utility costs, and it's something that needs to be dealt with. But the fact still remains, if we don't augment our source of energy, it's going to be worse than it is now. So that's why renewable energy is so important to the overall scheme.
Yeah, we're being penalized. Yep. That's my point. Why are we being penalized? So how many small businesses, if you know the number of how many small businesses were destroyed in California?
No, I don't. Google it.
I know what it is.
Not a big deal, but it's kind of a big deal to me. The U.S. Postal Service has a rule that if you ask their folks to back up, you meet them on the road delivering a package at your house. I'm driving uphill in my 15-passenger van. The postal lady's coming down. We met in the middle. I told her she had to back up. That's California law, right? Whoever's coming down backs up. Not so if you're driving a postal vehicle. If you ask them to back up more than 50 feet, they stop package delivery at your home. It's a real thing. You can Google it. How do we change that, right? How do we change that? I have a child who just had a kidney transplant. UCSF wants to mail me medicines. I can't take the chance of not getting meds. And, you know, our postal service, for 2 years I've been battling this one. and I've had my road repaved, $75,000. They said, did you make it a two-lane? Well, I have a very nice road. This happened once. I just think it's ludicrous that we have postal employees penalized if they back up more than 50 feet. And I thought it was just a Kelseyville thing. It's not. When you look it up online, it's a whole U.S. Postal Service thing.
Well, I've never heard that before, but now that I know, I'll look into it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're right, it's California law, if you're the one going downhill, you back up, so I don't understand why they would get some sort of.
It's a real huge
California
thing
law.
across the U.S. apparently, and people lose their jobs over it. Their backup time is tracked on their vehicle, and they will lose their jobs.
I was a postal employee during graduate school.
We can
so
do better.
As far as zip code sorting mail, I can tell you anything you want to know. But delivering it, I don't know so much. Yes, ma'am.
Public health, I went to my VA appointment yesterday and asked the doctor about a COVID check. Well, we don't know if we're going to get them, and see if we have them in stock, we get what we have now, which they did, so she encouraged me to get one then. And they wrote, she doesn't know about the flu shots, what's going to happen. So how do we get this guy out?
Yeah, I heard about the COVID vaccine shortages today at the judge's breakfast. And from someone who has a facility with a lot of elderly people where they need that. Now, I just can't even begin to describe the damage that Robert F. Kennedy has done in the healthcare space. And this administration is what set that up. It's very, very dangerous. But just heard about the COVID shortage, and we're looking into that, trying to get some answers.
We have time for one more, that's all.
Have what?
We just have time for one more, that's all.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mike, I want you to know I appreciate the work that you've done all these years, and I really like how your tone of piss off has increased, and I'd like to see you increase it more. But you know, we got like 50, 60 people in here. What would you recommend that we do to get to that 3.5%, to get Trump, whatever it is, out of office?
Well, that's a question I'm asked a lot. And I can tell you there's a bunch of things that you can do, and they all start with local involvement. And there's a number of local organizations that are focused on trying to stop this madness and focus on the next election, which is November on Prop 50. And I would strongly suggest that you get in touch with one of those local groups, join up and get involved.
Not to be self-serving, but we are involved with the local Democratic Assembly Committee, and invite you all to come to, what is it, isn't there a Monday? Yeah.
First.
On
There's a Monday in Middletown in the park. It's Labor Day, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. There will be demonstrations co-sponsored by the local Democrats. And I'll also suggest people look up indivisible LakeCountyCA.com.
So noted. And then on another note, I've been meeting in my unofficial capacity with all of the different Democratic groups in our district, and we've started an Adopt a District program to help Democrats who are in marginal districts and to help Democrats who are running to flip red districts blue, and it's been pretty successful.
And Lake County is going to need that if we become District 1. We're going to need to flip it. So push Mike McGuire to run.
It's going to be an easy seat to flip.
Okay.
Good. All right, thank you guys very, very much. Before you leave,